for an instant audit on this. Let's go to Fox Business contributor Charles Payne and Jim Frischling, the co-founder and president of NewOak Capital. Jim, Charles, thanks for joining us this morning. So, looking to cash in on the higher oil prices, but just looking back over a one-year chart of oil, range-bound is how I would describe these prices. That it hasn't really, Charles, been able to break out of this range that it's been in.
It hasn't been able to break out, but it's made a pretty significant rebound considering, you can't, I don't know that there's a direct correlation to the rebound in the global economy and oil outside of maybe some justification with China and India. But so in that respect, I think oil's really done a pretty good job. It wasn't too long ago people were saying $30 a barrel and things like that. So it's made a really good move and seems to me poised to make a real big move from here if there are signs of life around the world outside of China and India.
Big move to the upside. So you think we could potentially see $100 again?
This year I think there's a chance depending on how much the world accelerates. But certainly I think as it's one of these things that, how new highs begat new highs. As this thing starts to move, for whatever reason, a lot of it could also come from speculative buying as well.
And Jim, what do you think OPEC's strategy is going to be here as they gather down in Cancun?
Well, twofold. One is I think the restarting of these drilling programs certainly is a nice sign that there are others who believe, or many that believe this recovery is here to stay. In terms of what's going on in Cancun, I think they're really trying to, I will say, attack the ability to limit the volatility in the oil market. Now, whether they can or can't accomplish that is a different story, but they really believe that $70 to $80 range, and there are those I think who believe it's going to inch to the higher side, so I agree with Charles on that. But I think they really do want to keep it, and they want to try to keep speculators out. Now, again, that's easy to say, but it's very hard to do.
Very, very hard to do, and especially if you start to see that volatility, Charles. Traders lick their chops and say, hey, this is the market that we love. This is why we trade crude oil. Potentially, if we start to see that volatility again, you do get those speculative investors back in there, and that could surely push up the price of oil.
It could, too. And you wonder, too, how much is OPEC factoring in the dollar and some of these? Are they saying that even though the dollar's been relatively strong of late, that maybe Europe gets its act together, the euro has a little bit of a bounce, and the dollar continues to pull back, the more longer-term trend. So it could also be an issue with where the people in OPEC believe maybe the dollar's run its course as well. But there's no doubt about it. People are looking for opportunities. People are looking for trades. The stock market's had an unbelievable run. Everyone's, there's a lot of money in bonds, and people are getting really antsy about holding bonds. There's a good chance that there could be some money shifting around in the investment world soon.
Yeah, and that was a big topic of conversation with traders I had yesterday on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. What they're seeing is there's been so much money still sitting on the sidelines, Jim, waiting to get put to work, and they see the risk for, the appetite for risk really returning to the market. And certainly the oil market is a place that a lot of those riskier traders would look to.
No, I agree with you. I think the risk appetite is increasing, especially given the performance of certainly the equity markets. But then if you look at the run-up in oil, I would question whether people are really going to get behind it, especially in front of OPEC. I guess the IEF coming out saying just how much supply they could bring to the market.
Yeah, well, these 35 drilling projects over the next 5 years, 5 million barrels a day. OPEC would certainly have the ability to contain prices if they chose to do so. All right, Charles and Jim, thank you very much.
For an instant audit on this, let's go to Fox Business contributor Charles Payne and Jim Frischling, the co-founder of NewOak Capital. Charles, let me begin with you. A lot of cynicism here in the UK covering this story that Sarkozy, of course, is falling behind in his regional elections in France, and wants to be seen shaking hands with the leader of the United States. Obviously politics plays a role in this, but telling Washington what to do is probably not going to be heard that loudly, is it?
Well, I hope it's not heard that loudly here. I mean, it's a little disingenuous at this point. Listen, he got the, President Obama went over there twice. He got the bows. He got the apologies. I guess that carried him for a certain amount of time. The big question is whether or not in this give and take, when he gets an opportunity to scold America about their financial system, about their healthcare system, will he bend to some pressure from the White House and offer up more troops for Afghanistan? That's going to be the big question mark on both sides of the Atlantic, I think.
And Jim, what do you think is going to come out of this? The French proposals for financial regulation have, for the most part, been shut down by the U.S. You know, taxes on financial dealings, on financial transactions, and splitting up big banks. The French say we don't need to do that. Our banks are healthy enough. Doesn't seem like they're on the same page when it comes to financial regulation.
Oh, no, I think that's very right. And while there are many topics on the list between Presidents Obama and Sarkozy, I think financial reform is going to be one of the biggest ones. I think here in the U.S., I've seen polls that seem to suggest that over 70% of Americans have a negative view of Wall Street, and that's I think putting it kindly. And then you take what's coming out of Europe and President Sarkozy's position, and I do think there's going to be some pressure from Sarkozy to do more. The criticism I'm hearing is that we are not going far enough in our attempts for financial reform. And again, I think Lehman demonstrated just how interconnected all these things are. So I think pressure is going to hit the Obama administration both here at home and now across the Atlantic.
And it's ironic, isn't it, Jim, because, you know, the EU has been agonizing over what to do with some of its member states that are facing these massive budget deficits, and yet France and Germany for the longest time were at loggerheads on how to solve the problem. So it's kind of ironic that he goes to the United States and tells the US it needs to get its act together and, you know, make sure that we don't have another financial meltdown as the one we've seen before.
A good defense might, in this case, be a good offense. And President Sarkozy taking the offensive on this side, again, on this side of the pond.
All right. It's always fun when Mr. Sarkozy gets in there and tries to stand tall, and I'll leave the jokes at that level. Charles and Jim, thank you very much. Let's go back to...